Think different. These two simple words changed how the world would use and appreciate all types of technology and media forever. Two simple words. Connecting people across the globe is the legacy of a man named Stephen Paul Jobs. Today, when we look at the history of Steve Jobs and connect his dots, we find his life demonstrates one of an influential leader that left a colossal legacy. He had new visionary ideas that would later create an amazing legacy. In 1976, Jobs and his good friend Steve Wozniak started building circuit boards in Steve's parents' garage, and Apple Computer was born. Here are just a few companies that also started out of a garage. Just 3 short years later, on December 12, 1980, Apple Computer goes public, ending the day with a market value of nearly $1.8 billion. In 1983, Time magazine names the computer Machine of the Year after watching Steve and his team create the Mac the year before.
Well, to create a new standard, it takes something that's not just a little bit different. It takes something that's really new and really captures people's imagination. And the Macintosh, of all the machines I've ever seen, is the only one that meets that standard.
Steve's vision and leadership proves to be extremely successful.
Apple's products are popular because they're simple, they're elegant, they're easy to use. But it all started from Steve Jobs asking that one question: what can we remove?
Jobs was devastated about how he could be removed from the company he built.
I'm convinced that the only thing that kept me going was that I loved what I did. You've got to find what you love. And the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do.
In 1985, Jobs started a company called Next that focused on a new operating system. Next would go on to develop the fastest operating system in the industry, known as OS X. Incorporated magazine named Jobs Entrepreneur of the Decade in April 1989. I was lucky enough to interview Beau Burlingham from Inc. magazine on Skype to his vacation home in Saint-Cyr, France. Mr. Burlingham conducted the interview with Steve Jobs in 1989 for their 10th anniversary special edition. Do you feel that he fulfilled his visions?
He was somebody who was really an artist. An artist has a vision. He had a vision of the future.
Was he a good leader?
He was definitely a good leader, because when you look what he accomplished, he couldn't have accomplished it if he wasn't a good leader. Look at what he did. Look at how he was able to take Apple when, frankly, it was on its way to disappearing as a company.
From the way I see it, Apple was a company that was based on innovation. When I left Apple 10 years ago, we were 10 years ahead of anybody else. The problem was that Apple stood still. I think the way out is not to slash and burn, it's to innovate. That's how Apple got to its glory, and I think that's how Apple could return to it.
Do you think he's changed the world?
Well, you probably know the answer to that question as well as I do. The fact that I'm talking to you now and that we're looking at each other, Steve Jobs was one of those people who made science fiction real. So yes, he changed the world. I think we honor his legacy by having people like you, who are 11 years old, do something like this.
After this success, Jobs met with some friends who introduced him to a company that brings together computer animation, technology, and creativity. Bringing art and technology together had always excited Jobs. He purchased the company by becoming the majority shareholder, proving that Steve is a passionate risk-taker with endless visions. That company became Pixar.
Pixar went on to create the world's first computer-animated feature film, Toy Story, and is now the most successful animation studio in the world.
We had the fortune to have Steve Jobs, who believes in passion and vision. He was responding to this passion.
It was really exciting when Steve was the one that bought our group.
So Brian, thank you so much for taking the time to see me.
Hey, no problem. It's always a pleasure to see you, and you can just call me Emo.
Thanks, Emo. Okay, can you tell me how you met John Lasseter?
Sure. I work at Walt Disney Imagineering, and specifically, we were working on Cars Land, and that is a movie that he wrote and directed himself. It was really great to work with him on that project.
Can you tell me a little bit about John's leadership style?
I'm trying to think, because I know that you're doing this about Steve Jobs and his leadership style, and I know that Steve is was very open about how he felt about things, and I know that you've seen research where he flies off the handle and he gets very angry about things because it's not what he wants it to be. I think John is very similar in that you always know if he's happy with something or if he's not. If there's an honesty there, he's always very clear. He doesn't hide stuff. He's very, very open and honest, and I think that's huge in his success.
Thanks.
Probably in Steve's as well.
Thank you.
As I'm sure you know, Jason, he was a very, very difficult person to work for, and he was very blunt.
Steve Jobs was a magnificent trendsetter in multiple lines of businesses, such as computers, software, animation, and soon in the music and media industries. Apple purchased Next on December 20th, 1996 for $429 million and 1.5 million shares of Apple's stock. In July 1997, Jobs was named CEO of Apple. His return took Apple back to its core values: keep it simple and straightforward. In 1997, Steve launches his legendary Think Different campaign to show the world that people with passion can and do change the world. This, Steve believed, was the core value of what Apple was built upon from its inception. And by returning to its basic values, it brought Apple back to be the industry leader it once was. In October 2001, Steve introduced the revolutionary iPod music player. It was the first device of its kind to be able to hold 1,000 songs in your pocket. Carrie Sherman says, "Of course other products will come along and try to copy the device, but at the moment, the iPod is the category."
The iPod it revolutionized music.
We're using his products because they're damn good products, and because they allow us to do things that we otherwise wouldn't be able to do.
Steve and his revolutionary vision of making technology simple allowed the iPad to make its way into many industries, such as healthcare.
Medtronic is the leading medical technology company in the world. Our products alleviate pain and restore health for those with chronic disease. The lifeblood of Medtronic is producing new products. Without innovation, we wouldn't be able to get those products and therapies to our patients. iPad fuels innovation so we can get information to customers much quicker than we could before.
Hedges goes on to say, iPad helps people think differently and act differently. iPad is a game changer in healthcare.
Very great leader. In fact, he had an impact on babies because babies are now accustomed to, sliding the screen. So he has absolutely changed our way of life every day.
When you think of leaders and their legacy, nobody does it better than Steve Jobs. In the final days of Steve's life, Walter Isaacson had a conversation with him about what he hoped his legacy would be. From the only authorized biography, Jobs shared his thoughts saying, "My passion has been to build an enduring company where people were motivated to make great products. I hate it when people call themselves entrepreneurs when they're unwilling to do the work it takes to build a real company. That's how you really make a contribution and add to the legacy of those who went before. You build a company that will stand for something a generation or two from now." That's what Walt Disney did and what Hewlett and Packard did. That's what I want Apple to be.